So today we're going to be talking about decluttering that paperwork. What do you keep? What do you toss? And how do you get rid of it in a secure way? Well, we're going to go over all those details coming up next. Hi everybody, my name is Dee Burks and this is Retirement Rescue, where we talk about how to make money, save money, and create a retirement from nothing. Well, we've been having a whole summer of declutter, and many of you, and I mean many of you, have asked for help decluttering paperwork. It seems like these days we are buried in an avalanche of paperwork. And while people may like to think that we're a paperless society, let me tell you what, we're not. We are absolutely not. And there is a lot of paperwork that you do need to retain. Now, first of all, let's talk about the paperwork that comes into your house. And when I mean paperwork, I mean things like bank statements, things like utility statements, any kind of statement for a bill you have to pay, any kind of invoice you have to pay. Anything like that that comes into your house. Now, I realize there are some people who conduct their entire lives online, and that's great. But most of us, it's a mix, and it really depends on what we're talking about. Is it a financial account? Is it a utility bill? What it is, if it's all online or not. And where you live. Where I live, a lot of that stuff is not online. Now, one of the habits I have, and I'll grant you, it's an old school habit, but a lot of you are the same way. If I get a statement in and I pay it, I write down the check number or when I paid it online, if I pay it online, and I keep those statements. There are always times you need to provide a proof that you paid something, or proof of residency for some reason. Whether you're applying for something or you're needing something, even if you're adopting an animal from the shelter, you need to provide proof of residency beyond just your ID or your driver's license. And they'll require something like a utility bill to prove where you live. Now, it is very rare, like I said, that I ever need those things, but it makes me feel better to keep them, at least for the year. When I file my taxes, for example, when I file my taxes in April, and you may file your taxes earlier than that, but when I file my taxes, I find that is the best time to declutter everything from the year before. I will go through these monthly bills, and I will keep the bank statements, and I will toss the rest, because I no longer need them. So I keep my bank statements, and I put that with my tax return for that year. It's all together. Now let's talk about your taxes, because those are a big deal. Any piece of paperwork that I use to file my taxes, I always print out and keep with a copy, a paper copy of my tax return. It's not that I couldn't keep those things electronically. I can, and I do. I keep an electronic copy of my tax return as well. But here again, for those of us who have lived through several versions of technology, if the IRS comes knocking at your door and says, yeah, you know, we need to go over that tax return from 6 years ago, and you happen to have your electronic copy stored in a way that's not accessible, that's a problem. And the IRS takes no excuses. They don't care. You need to have your paperwork. So I always print out a copy. I print out a copy of every statement that I use to prepare that return, whether that's a 1099, a mortgage statement, if you have student loans still that you're paying, if you have anything like that, your IRA statement that you may use to file your taxes, all of that goes with my taxes. And when I file my taxes, I then take all those things and use a really big banker's clip and put all of those things into an envelope for that year. Everything for that year is together. Some of the things I include: year-end statements for your 401k or your 403b or your IRA, even if you didn't have to include them on your tax return. I include year-end statements. I look at everything in that envelope as a financial statement of where I was at the end of that year. Now the IRS will tell you 7 years on some things, 10 years on some things, but that is not all the paperwork you need to keep. There are many, many other things that you need to keep. And there are numerous legal documents you need to keep depending on what's going on in your life, and you need the originals. You cannot use, in most states, an electronic copy of legal court documents. You have to have an actual certified copy. This includes things like divorce decrees. And you may think, oh, gosh, I've been married three times. That first divorce was in the 70s. Let me tell you what, y'all. When I went to get a driver's license in New Mexico, it was ridiculous. Women, because you know it doesn't affect men, but women have to bring a copy of every divorce decree they have ever had, and it has to be an original. It is harder to get a driver's license in New Mexico than it is to get a passport. It's crazy, but you need the original copy. You never know where there might be an instance you need that original copy. So be sure you keep an original. The same is true for any kind of court judgment. If you have a workers' comp case, if you have any kind of court documents where the court decreed something, either something you were owed or any case you were in, keep the final decree from that court case, the original. Be sure you keep the original. If you have been through a bankruptcy, the final documents from that bankruptcy, either releasing your bankruptcy or the final judgments, all of that you need to keep. You don't need to keep the original documents you used to file it. You need to keep the original documents that were the final judgments. You need to keep the original copy of wills. Anything legal, you need original copies, and you need at least one copy of those. You can always, yes, go back to the courthouse and get a certified copy if you need to, but it's just easier to have one file with all your legal things in it and have all those originals in one place. Now, there are several other documents you should also keep. If you have bought or sold real estate, then you know the amount of paperwork you have to sign for that real estate and mortgage when you go into closing, right? A lot of times they'll even give you a fancy little holder for it, like this, Stewart title, right? A fancy little holder, and it is a lot of documents. Y'all remember signing all these, right? It's crazy how much documentation there is. Always keep everything in this packet until you sell that property. And I always wait at least a year after I've sold a piece of real estate to do away with the documents. You never know what issues there might be, so you don't want to do that too quickly. And again, I usually wait until I filed my tax return for that year, and I'll then shred those documents as well as the other documents I'm shredding. Other documents you need to keep: vehicle titles. It's amazing how many people misplace or can't find vehicle titles or boat titles or any other kind of title. You want to be sure you keep those all in one place where they're easy to find. Also, any loans or notes that go with those vehicles, you want to keep a copy of until it's paid off. And then you can do away with all that paperwork and only keep a copy of where that loan was released. I send you a letter that says, hey, you're paid up. We've released this lien on this piece of property or this item, and you're done. You need to keep that piece of paper just in case way down the road someone says, hey, you owe 72 cents plus $8,800 in late fees for this mortgage. You can say, nope, they sent me this letter. So always keep those. The same is true with your mortgage. Those of you who have had a mortgage any length of time, you know they get sold repeatedly. And one minute it's being serviced by one company, the next minute it's being serviced by the next company. It is not unusual for things to really get out of whack when one company takes it over from another company. In fact, it's pretty common. So you always want to keep the letter that says where your mortgage has been transferred. And if something happens and you don't get a statement, they don't tell you where to send your money, you can contact them. but you always want to keep those letters because it is very common for mortgages to really get messed up in transfer. The same is true with student loans. Now, if you have a government guaranteed student loan, as many people do, those are usually serviced by one or two companies at the most. They don't transfer that often, but they will if you have them a very long time. The same cannot be said for private student loans. If you have a private student loan, that might be transferred repeatedly. And if you don't get a statement or something happens, you need to be able to contact them. So you want to keep paperwork and documentation of paying that loan. Now, once it's paid and you get the final documents that it's paid, all you need are those final documents. You can shred everything else. Another thing you need to keep copies of is your current, not all your old policies, but your current insurance policies, the ones you have currently in force. It is not unusual for us to have an insurance policy we let lapse years ago and it's still in a file. The homeowner's policy we had 2 homes ago and it's still in the file. You need the current policy. All these companies are required to send you a copy of your current policy when you renew it if it's property and casualty, like a homeowner's policy, car insurance policy. Now let's talk about life insurance for a little bit. A lot of times that when you buy life insurance, they will send you a policy, but they won't necessarily send you another copy of it ever. So you need to have that original policy and you need to keep that original policy. Now if it's term life, and it's no longer in effect, yes, you can get rid of it. But if it's whole life and it's paid up and it's still in force, it's still protecting you, you need a copy of it, and you need a copy of that in your insurance file. You can have one file that says insurance. You can keep your life insurance, your property and casualty insurance, everything in one file where it's easy to access and people can find it if they need to, should something happen to you. A lot of people also have warranties on things. A home warranty, warranty on equipment, warranty on electronics. You can have one file that just says warranties. You do not need a separate file for every single warranty. Put all your warranties in one file. If you have an issue with anything that needs a warranty and you have one, it's going to be in that file. You can grab it immediately. You also need a file for contracts. If you have a contract for something, if you lease land to someone, if you lease grazing rights to someone, if you have oil or gas royalties and you have leased options to anybody, there's certain things you have contracts for. Your cell phone. Most people have a contract on their cell phone. Anything you have a contract for, I keep in one file. And it says contracts. If there's ever a contract issue or I need to look up an end date or a start date, anything like that, it's in the contract file. I also have a file that says ID. Anything associated with proving who I am, it goes in that file. My birth certificate, my passport, marriage certificates. If you're currently married, have your marriage certificate in there. Even if you have a spouse that is deceased and has been deceased a long time, keep a copy of your marriage certificate. You may at some point, even maybe when you apply for Social Security, need to prove you were married to that person. So go ahead and keep a copy of that. Anything to do with your identity. And the last thing that I have in my file box is passwords. I have a little notebook that has my passwords in it. It's in the file box. If something happened to me, and a lot of people don't think about this, but if you've been an executor, you know what a pain it can be if you don't know people's passwords, if you don't know their code words, even for things as simple as just trying to return satellite equipment or cable equipment. This happened to me when my last husband died. The cable company he had at that time, since he was the only one on that account, would not allow me to return the equipment or close the account, even though I had a death certificate. It was crazy. But those kinds of things happen if you don't have the code word to accounts, if you don't have a password, and especially on financial accounts. whoever is the executor of your estate needs to be able to access some of those, to get basic financial information, to get beneficiary information, there's all kinds of reasons people need those passwords. And if you have any digital assets, as I do, if you have books that are selling online, if you have a YouTube channel, all of that information needs to be available for whomever is going to be taking those over or selling those assets. So it's really important that you keep vital passwords, not every single password. They don't need necessarily your password to Instagram, but hey, it can be in there too. But they will be able to take care of things much easier if you allow your executor access to that. Now let's say you have decluttered and you've got a big pile of paperwork. How do you securely get rid of that paperwork? Well, of course, you're going to want to shred it. You can either buy a shredder yourself, or you could do like I do, since I do it once a year. There are many, many businesses, UPS store, FedEx store, a lot of box pack mails, Office Depot, Staples. A lot of these stores offer document shredding, secure document shredding. They will ensure your documents are shredded, and they usually charge by the pound, and it's $1 to $2 generally per pound, and they always have a minimum of like 3 pounds. So they'll have a minimum of $5 to $10, and you take your paperwork in there that needs to be shredded. They will shred it for you, and you don't have to worry that someone's going to get your financial information. That is a great way to do it. I used to actually have a small shredder. And the shredder was about $30. Well, I had so many things to shred when I was initially decluttering that thing quit in no time, and that $30 was wasted. I could have taken the whole thing and spent maybe $15. And so you have to look at how much you have to shred. But for most people, the most efficient way to shred documents is to take it to one of these services. If you are trying to find one of these services near you, go to Google and type in document shredding near me, and they'll all pop up. You can access online to see what their fees are and when they're shredding. All of the information is usually online, or you can call them and see. So there are many, many great ways for you to get rid of that paperwork, not worry about retaining too much. If anything, we all retain too much. I probably still retain too much. But I've cut it way, way down. It is one file box. That's it. And that's for personal. That does not include business. But as you retire, or as you get to the end of your career where you're no longer having big fat tax returns, your taxes become much more simplified. Your financial statements become much more simplified. And there's no reason for all of this clutter to still be in your financial space. Now, if you've enjoyed this video, please click subscribe, and I'll see you next time.